I've been asked to discuss first how Talisman came to publish Gustaf. The answer is simply coincidence, total coincidence. Meaning is imposition. About 30 years ago, Ted Berrigan was telling people that if you were a poet, you should be a poet all the time. That meant that when you weren't writing or thinking about writing, you should be translating, helping other poets, his specialty, teaching or publishing, and so on. Talisman grew out of that. A second coincidence, Joe Donahue, who has been intimate with Talisman almost from the beginning, and Jeff O'Brien said there should be a selected of Gustaf's work, since the Matamora books were now difficult to come by. I've worked with many poets, translators, and editors, some of them exceedingly demanding, although the most demanding have often been more pedantic than perfectionists. One of the great exceptions was Gustaf. Zoe English, who copy edits much of the fiction and prose that Talisman publishes, virtually all of it actually, does not copy edit the poetry. That is, she says, principally the poet's job. And some are exceedingly good at it, but none, with possible exception of William Bronck, was more so than Gustaf. Characteristically, we would go through 3, 4, 5 sets of proofs, each involving significant adjustments and variants, 4 spaces where there had been 3, lowercase where there had been caps, changes in word order, changes in words. Compare earlier versions of the work in the selected with the versions of those in the Matamora editions to see what I mean. The poem was always evolving. The collected may be best said to represent the last versions Gustaf gave us, but it should be clear that there would have been further changes if he had done the editing himself. There was a refusal of finality. Working with Gustaf meant revisions of revisions. I pity the scholar who someday tries to establish the text. I would myself imagine Gustaf as driven by spiritual concerns, but once in Avignon, in the very shadow of the Vatican in exile, he indicated that was not strictly true. We then went where Petrarch had seen Laura when he was supposed to be attending to an Easter Mass. A nice coincidence. Laura would change, Easter would not. All of my contacts with Gustaf, and there were many, seemed to involve travel, hotels, restaurants. I visited him in his home, he visited me in mine. Although he will always be associated with Provence, I would myself associate him rather with a Gramercy Park hotel, passing through once again on his way somewhere else, engaged in another transparent itinerary. The transparent itineraries, Gustaf said, and as Andrew Zawacki pointed out, were initially compiled from lines written on note cards, the first of which were done during his travels. When he returned, he set them out to see if an order could be found in them. The order, as it happened, was exactly that which coincidence provided. The order as they lay next to each other. As printed, they would be centered, separated from each other by 2 lines, and a long discussion whether it should be 1 line or 2, decided on 2. In one sense, they would be as linear, one following the other, as the broken white lines in the center of a road. But since beyond that, the order was totally coincidental, the energy of each line proposed would have its response in all of the other lines in the work, not merely to those to which it was adjacent. Although Gustaf, in the interview I did with him, compares certain works of his with the dynamics of a waterfall, the analogy does not hold here. In a sense, it is the opposite of the coherence imminent in the episode from Petrarch's life that he pointed to, as it proposes an ordering in which each line is a beginning in a matrix with no termination and infinite revision and open possibility. And there was the other side, the precisionist in prose. Working on his book set in Istanbul in search of a vanishing star, Gustaf would call from time to time and write for details. What was the weather like there, this time of year or that? What were the streets like? The mood the city conveyed at a given time of the year? What specifically about the Peripalos Hotel, the rooms, the entranceway, the famous birdcage elevator? He built his Istanbul, which I believe he never visited, out of quite specific references and details, a set of coincidences that conveyed the sense of a place that he did not know himself nor needed to. This, too, was coincidentally a transparent itinerary or part of one.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think with only like 15 minutes, I actually want to open it up to the audience first. But please, as you're answering questions from the audience, please feel free to add comments here from the panel that if there's something you think was missed, something you'd like to add. And as I hear questions from the audience, I'll probably repeat the question so to make sure everybody hears it. So, any questions out there? Okay, any questions from the panel while you're thinking, or points you would like to add to this? Teddy.
When I need a microphone because my voice is doesn't carry. When about the Shar relationship between why they fought, why they distanced each other. So Shar from Sobin. I remember Sobin told us that when his wife got pregnant, he went and told René Shar, "My wife is pregnant. I'm really very happy." And he said, "That's the end of our friendship because I don't believe poets should have children. So you can't come to my house anymore because your wife is pregnant." That's the story that I heard.
There are a number of conflicting stories about the breakup between Shar and Sobin. I never heard that one. The family tells the story that Teddy just told. In the French biography of René Char, another story is told that the breakup occurred on the basis of Sobin's translations of Char, that Sobin had translated the book that eventually was published by Counterpath Press, and that Char wasn't really happy with those translations, and Char at that point was getting translated by the likes of Samuel Beckett, and so this young American poet just wasn't meeting the standard, and so that was the cutoff. So I think it was complex. I think there were a number of factors going into it. It was probably an overdetermined breakup. But the nice thing is that they eventually reconciled, and in a very nice way. A mutual friend, and I think the years of the breakup were almost 10 years. But a mutual friend brought Sobin to Char's house, and Char and they encountered each other, and Char greeted Sobin as if no time had passed. He just embraced him, and no reference was made to the breakup, and they continued as friends, and that's. Yeah.
I just wanted to add two things. One is that I think the Lacoste castle became, it was bought by Jean-Paul Gaultier, and it was used for fashion shows. At least that's the story.
Yeah, it was something.
That on a given night you could see sort of pink and purple light coming up, and only the elect could be. I always wanted to go, so I wasn't able to. The other is that Michael mentioned, well, the lack of punctuality in one case of Gustaf's, and Ed was talking about a poet should write every day, and Ted Berrigan's conception. Gustaf seemed to really do that. I mean, it was a very, very almost Ignatian kind of spiritual exercise going into this cabinet and writing. He would get up at I don't know what time, but he had a real fetish for watches. He had a lot of watches and some pretty nice ones. He would start promptly at whatever pre-dawn hour he had decided upon. The times when I was in France that he would call me, he would always call many hours before my girlfriend and I were up, and he would never seem to learn the lesson that we wouldn't be up until 8 o'clock or 8:30, so there would be messages with that kind of diffident, I see you're not awake yet, kind of moralistic tone. And if I wanted to talk to him, I had to really call between 11:30 and 12:30 in the afternoon, which is when he took his lunch. And if I didn't catch him then he was out again until 4:30. And he was just over there, but it was, that was off limits when he was writing or researching or doing the various things that comprised working on a book or a poem. He was absolutely not to be disturbed. And it was a pretty incredible, instructive lesson in, time and timelessness and commitment and sort of just sheer urgency about the work. And I would constantly think, how does he do that? One can't do that. When in the real world, people don't do that. But that was a very real world, and that person really did do that. And so it's pretty incredible.